back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in our next guest. It's going to be Megan Brantley, VP of Research at Likefolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. We've got Home Depot. The stock's up 20% this year. You know, they've had a couple quarters in a row of declining comparable sales, but it seems like the stock's moving more on optimism for the housing market to rebound, the consumer to go back into spending on big ticket items on this one. What kind of data do you have here on Home Depot?
You know, yeah, I think that was the resounding theme that we saw last quarter, is that there was a lot of pent-up demand and consumers who were waiting to splurge on those big products. And I will say, for the first time, we're starting to see some nice positive momentum from Home Depot and from Lowe's. Those web visits are ticking up on a year-over-year basis. We also see signs of increased pro app activity, and so I think that that could be something that's positive for Home Depot. But you can see on this chart here, you know, the more surprising thing whenever we were looking at this data is just how much we're seeing a rebound in Lowe's versus Home Depot, because, you know, Lowe's is the smaller player here when we look at this from a mention volume perspective. So it's interesting to see it gaining momentum. We think most of this momentum is just in that DIY consumer versus the professional consumer, where Home Depot has a bit of an edge, but at large, some nice positive traffic patterns emerging for both of these home retailers.
You know, Megan, they had a nice earnings beat on the 12th of November. A little hurricane helped them, obviously. They revised their full year 24 guidance. They closed the acquisition of SRS, which, you know, it sounds like, if I'm reading this correctly, that's going to really help not only sales, but the emphasis on that pro that they're so dominant at. So is this what Home Depot's doing? They were able to tick ever so higher their full year numbers because of that. Is this market, is Lowe's, Home Depot, and the relationship with the pro segment, is that the key to this company? You know, we always talk about Lowe's trying to catch up to Home Depot in the pro segment. It doesn't seem like they ever do. It actually seems like Home Depot becomes more and more dominant. Higher interest rates haven't helped them. Higher mortgage rates haven't helped them. Maybe both of those will soften. Are there better days ahead for this company, even though it's hanging in there pretty tough, Megan?
Yeah, I think that that's really important. The professional segment is the real differentiator whenever we're looking at a Home Depot versus a Lowe's, because Home Depot's split from a revenue perspective is about 50-50 in terms of generating revenue from DIY consumers versus that professional segment, whereas Lowe's is much more tilted heavier on that DIY consumer. I think about 75% of its revenue comes from that DIY consumer. And so Home Depot, it's really smart, I think, what the company did with that acquisition of the SRS distribution, like you talked about. It's really leaning into this professional segments and expanding that audience with those specialty supplies and really being ready for when consumers are ready to tackle those larger projects. And, you know, we've also seen some other signs that consumers are perhaps ready to make those bigger purchases, the increasing their spending in the house. Whenever you look at Restoration Hardware's report, you see how that stock's performing today. We saw a nice report out of Williams-Sonoma last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. And so there are some signs for us that the consumer is finally ready. They're saying, okay, we've waited so long on these projects, we really can't wait anymore. We see a really strong uptick. If you were to shorten that moving average to a 7-day moving average just over the last 2 weeks for Home Depot, a really strong surge, especially around that Black Friday shopping that I think is promising long term. So whenever we look at these companies, we think that Home Depot is best positioned long term to capture a lot of that pent up demand in home improvement projects when that starts coming. We may be starting to see the first signs of that right now, but I think especially this spring, Home Depot stands to benefit from that.
Megan, you know, I keep on hearing these reports. As far as e-commerce sales, Home Depot is like in the top 5. Do you guys have data on that? That like people, you know, are buying stuff at Home Depot for Christmas gifts, and that's starting to pick up because the consumer is still relatively strong at this point, and their pro business drives them. But hey, that DIY, that could be a benefit also, right?
Yes, and whenever we're listening to a lot of what consumers are talking about on social media, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a viral Home Depot Christmas tree that consumers were clamoring to get. They're arguing over which Home Depot artificial tree was better. Either way, that's just an example of consumers are excited to shop at Home Depot. They're certainly going more online now. We see a lot of traction in Home Depot's app activity as well, which is really nice if Home Depot can capture those consumers in its own ecosystem and learn more about them and start to offer more personalized content that creates a much stickier consumer. And so I think that Home Depot is doing all the right things. It really comes down to these macro factors of when those consumers start tackling those home improvement projects. And when they do, we think Home Depot is really much better positioned than its peer Lowe's.
Home Depot, number 5, $22.43 billion. That's behind Amazon, Walmart, Apple, eBay. So people are buying, tools online, I guess. All right, great stuff, great data. As always, Megan, have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. You too.
All right, that's Megan Brantley, VP of Research at Likefolio, breaking down Home Depot. It's all pretty positive, Kevin, but these stocks, Lowe's and Home Depot, their last bunch of earnings have been not great. They've been